been said of Mr. Peres that he was one of the last of a generation of Israeli politicians present at the nation's birth in 1948. He held almost every public office, including those of Prime Minister and President. He won the Nobel Peace Prize in 1994 for his role in negotiating the Oslo Peace Accords, a prize he shared with Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin and Palestinian leader Yasser Arafat. Needless to say, Mr. Peres was a leading figure on Israel's political landscape and respected the world over. It is therefore an honor for us, in association with the Consulate General of Israel in Bangalore, to pay tribute to this giant amongst men. I will begin by requesting the President of the Indian Economic Trade Organization, Mr. Asif Iqbal, to please welcome this august gathering. Mr. Iqbal.
So we were waiting for her to be back, and this is something that we are very proud of, looking at Mr. Peres's personality as a guiding force for promoting peace between different communities. Today, we have people from the fraternity of Bengaluru who are here. Her Excellency, the Consul General of Germany, she was kind enough to take her time out. We also had other consuls, but due to the visit of ministers from Canada and Prime Minister of UK who's arriving tomorrow, but we are thankful that Mrs. Consul General of Great Britain, she is here. Thank you, Madam. The late Shimon Peres, who often described Mr. Gandhi as a prophet and Nehru as a king, he always said that India was fortunate to be blessed with two great and unforgettable leaders. So being in line with this kind of leadership gives us a direction to take this nation forward. He also often mentioned how fascinating it was to read Mr. Gandhi's autobiography and Mr. Nehru's discovery of India, which were translated eventually in Hebrew in the 1940s. So he also wished that India would become a permanent member of the Security Council, and he reiterated the same belief several times on different occasions. However, he also said that we are following India with great care and interest, not just in the political sense, but being a citizen of the world. And being a citizen of the world is a direction that we in India at this time are identifying ourselves with. So I once again welcome all of you today, and I would now like to call Her Excellency Madam Yael Hashavit, the Consul General of Israel here, to come and give her address. Thank you.
Shalom. Good afternoon. Friends, colleagues, thank you for coming. We gathered here today to remember and to commemorate the man, the legend, and may I say, person who was a living history, Shimon Peres. The Israeli poet Shaul Chernichovsky once wrote, "Laugh and play with my dreams. I am the dreamer who wanders. Play because in men I will believe." Those words of the poets describe the man that was Shimon Peres, a dreamer, an optimist, a statesman, a diplomat, a man who believed in humankind, a man who believed in the human spirit. President Peres was in every major event in the history of the State of Israel. He was there when the State of Israel was established. He was there when our enemies attacked Israel in brutal wars. He was there when the peace agreements with Egypt and Jordan were signed. He was there trying to find a path for peace with the Palestinians. And he received the Nobel Prize of Peace for giving the peoples of our region the hope for better and peaceful life. In his long career, he had been in almost every possible position. He was Director General of the Defense Ministry, Member of the Parliament, Minister of Immigration, of Agriculture, of Finance, of Defense, he was the Foreign Minister, Prime Minister, and the President of the State of Israel. He brought fresh ideas and brisk energies to every office he held. He was the man who changed the course of Israeli history. He became the history of the State of Israel. But more than that, he was an idealist, he was a dreamer. As Shimon Peres himself once said, "For me, dreaming is simply being pragmatic." He was that kind of person who had the courage to fight for his dreams and ideas, the man who never stopped believing in his way. He never got desperate, he never gave up his beliefs and ideas. Those ideas that at the beginning people thought as crazy, impossible to implement, later become part of daily life in Israel. It was the lighthouse of our nation, a lighthouse of ideas, knowledge, and curiosity, giving us his dreams and hopes to follow. The light of his beliefs allow us to build our nation. Even in his death, he continued to contribute and to give hope to other people. He ordered his family to donate his organs after his death for those who will need it. This kind of man was Shimon Peres. Today, I ask all of you to keep remembering this great man that touched all of us straight in our hearts. No doubt that we will miss him, his energy, and his eternal youth. Thank you, President Peres, for being you and what you gave to our nation. May you rest in peace. Thank you.
Dear Yael Hashavit, the Consul General of Israel, the other members of the diplomatic corps in Bengaluru, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Israel lost a momentous statesman, a former state president, and a founding father of the State of Israel. Germany lost an honorable partner, its advisor for reconciliation, and a close friend. And the world lost a Nobel Prize winner, a visionary personality, and a champion of peace. Today, we have gathered here to express our deep sorrow about the loss of Shimon Peres and to remember him as a friend and as a role model. Shimon Peres' achievements and the service he rendered, not only to Israel, but to the entire world, have been tremendous. He spent his whole life working for freedom and security, for peace and reconciliation against all odds. He had the profound belief that Israelis and Palestinians can live peacefully next to each other. He won the Nobel Prize for his constant commitment for a permanent peace in the Middle East and for his contribution to the Oslo Accords. He never lost hope that peace in the Middle East would be possible one day. And I am convinced he would have been happy to see Benjamin Netanyahu and Mahmoud Abbas shaking hands at his funeral. Shimon Peres was a true friend of Germany. Despite the difficult historical relationship between both our countries, he was a constant partner, a friend, and an advisor for reconciliation. He helped Germany to enshrine the memory of the Holocaust in the historical conscience of the German nation. Being one of the founding fathers of Israel, the country of the survivors, he influenced the state profoundly. And despite all the cruelty his people had to go through, he gave my nation a second chance, he extended a hand to the German people, and he helped to grow friendship between both countries. I am convinced that, as a society, as a nation, we would not be where we are today without his effort. And therefore I am grateful beyond all measure. We are all greatly indebted to Shimon Peres. He gave many people new hope and a vision to live up to. This is his legacy. And this legacy calls for us not to forget, to hold on to his vision and to continue where he had to end. It was not granted to him to witness the realization of his dream. The world is becoming more complicated day by day, in the Middle East, but also elsewhere. We should take up Shimon Peres' baton now and continue his work. This will be the greatest honor, the greatest respect we can show him. May he rest in peace.
Ladies and gentlemen, today we are gathered here to pay our tributes to a giant statesman of our era, a visionary, and someone who firmly believed in peace, that is late President Mr. Shimon Peres. In fact, Mr. Shimon Peres was the very essence of Israel. As a founding father, his contribution to the state of Israel is unparalleled. He not only witnessed history, as Her Excellency stated, he was there at every instance, whatever that happened, including whether it was Entebbe, whether it was the Suez crisis or anything, he was there. But he not only witnessed, but he practically shaped the history. In fact, in the first half of his life, almost half a century, he was the one who worked for Israel to build its military capabilities, its defense, its nuclear capabilities, its settlements, everything that is possible to ensure the safety and security of the state so that it has a secure boundary. Only to realize and work for peace, promotion of peace in the second half of his life, firmly believing that his boys or his community will not be at home. His boys cannot hang up their shoes and live in peace unless Israel also can live in peace and exist as a state. His firm belief in the two-state reality, that's what propelled him to do whatever he did. Late Mr. Shimon Peres was a great man with a large heart. He firmly believed, as he rightly said, I've seen so much of violence, so much of other things, so I have earned a right to dream of peace. So he was one person who believed not in confrontation for the future, but in conciliation. He believed in something empowerment, social and economic empowerment, rather than anger and frustration. He believed in his state, in the region and the world, living in caring and sharing, rather than trying to be acrimonious with each other. In fact, Mr. Shimon Peres, who was born, as most of you are aware, in Poland, way back in 1923, which is now in Belarus, he, as he himself said, he was influenced largely by his grandfather, Rabbi Zwimelzer. And unfortunately, after being influenced by him in 1941, his entire family, which stayed back, as well as including his grandfather, were killed or murdered, and his grandfather was burnt alive in the synagogue in the town. So these are the experiences which built him. And Mr. Shimon Peres was one who, as Her Excellency stated, held every conceivable responsible positions possible in Israel. He was the foreign minister, the finance minister, the prime minister twice, and the president finally between 2007 and 2014. And I was fortunate to see him in 2014 in San Francisco. I still remember when he came and he spoke at the synagogue there. He said both Israel as well as California were deserts only a few decades back. And what human can do, now both California as well as Israel are booming. He was what do you call an eternal dreamer, and more than that, he was a doer. He believed in what he thought was right, and he continued. For us, India, he was a true friend, and many of you may not believe, the seeds of friendship between India and Israel were sown by late Mr. Shimon Peres way back in 1985 when Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi went to New York for our UNGA session, and he was there as the Prime Minister, and they met at that time, and that's where the seeds were sown. It took about 7 years when India officially recognized Israel and ready to establish an embassy. At that time, in January, I think it was Mr. Narasimha Rao who announced that we will establish diplomatic relations. At that time, he was not there. But later, when we really established the embassy in summer of 1992, Mr. Shimon Peres was the foreign minister. And in 1993, of course, you all know the Oslo Accords, and subsequently he got the Nobel Peace Prize. But what is also more important is that after that, he tried hard to ensure that India gets into some of the working groups that were set up to ensure that the working relationship between Israel and Palestine becomes a reality. One particular working group was on water resource management between the two countries, where India played a very, very important role. In fact, after he retired as the President of Israel, our Prime Minister Modi became here, he assumed office. He wanted to see Mr. Modi, apparently, and he requested the Israeli ambassador in Delhi, who passed on the request to PMO, Prime Minister's office, and they say that within 20 minutes, Prime Minister agreed to see late Mr. Shimon Peres, which in a way is a kind of a record that a head of state or government agreeing to see what you call antargime, a private citizen. So that he came and he saw him and he had a wonderful meeting with him. And the last, our president, Mr. Pranab Mukherjee also, I think they both met each other 1 year back, almost last October they met, where our president said that we have a strong friend who worked throughout his life for the establishment of India and Israel relationship, and today's thriving relationship, he is mainly responsible. I think that's how we remember Mr. Shimon Peres in India. As we all talk of the policy, the defense, foreign affairs and all that, it's also interesting to note that Mr. Shimon Peres was a man, and sometimes you wonder how one man can do so much. In fact, in terms of technology, in the 80s, he was considered as a founding father of the technological era in Israel. And the startup policies way back in Israel, they started in 80s. And then I think later, he also, as we all know, he kind of took a fascination for this nanotechnology and brain research. And he established even a fund for nanotechnology way back in 2003 and raised good amount of money. And then even after he retired in 2014 as the President of India, he established the Israel Innovation Institute, where he believed that irrespective of the religion or the belief system that one has, whether he's a Muslim or a Christian or a Jewish or anybody, can come and get inspired because it is the technology, it is the innovation that brings people together. And if I may add that he was also a kind of a poet, used to write poems. Right from the age of 8, when he was a child, he started writing, and many of his poems have been converted into songs, and then whatever that money that is received out of that was given out to charity. So throughout his age of 93 years of good life, when seeing everything, with all that he lived a full life, and as finally, as we can say, even Mr. Netanyahu also said that after his death, they named this the Negev research, nuclear research facility and the reactor in the name of Mr. Shimon Peres. It's a kind of accolade for him. And as President Obama finally said, a light has gone out, but the spirit he has kindled in the hearts of everybody for peace, for the hope for peace, that is to burn in everybody's heart. So he was the one who did not want anybody to kind of depend on history rather than look to the future and imagine. So what we can say, as Excellency, the Consul General of Germany said, we can only do at this stage is to ensure that his vision of peace is something which we should believe that it is achievable, not just in the region, not just in between Israel and Palestine, but all over the world. And I think we should all strive for that. While we mourn his death, at the same time, I think we should celebrate his tremendous achievements in every aspect of life. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Avinu Malkeinu, Shema Holeinu. Avinu Malkeinu, Chatanu Penecha. Avinu Malkeinu, Hamol Aleinu. Avinu Malkeinu, Chalidei, V'yacherev yara, Mi'aleinu. Avinu Malkeinu, Chalei kotzah, Hamasatim, Mi'aleinu. Avinu Malkeinu, Avinu Malkeinu, Hotavienu, Nesefer Chaim Tovim. Avinu Malkeinu, Adish Aleinu, Adish Aleinu, Shana Tova. Avinu Malkeinu, Avinu Malkeinu, Chodesh Aleinu, Shana Tova. Avinu Malkeinu, Shema Choleinu, Shema Choleinu, Shema Choleinu, Shema Choleinu.
Shimon Peres was a very dear friend for Gurudev Sri Sri Ravi Shankar as well as for the art of living. This is the message of Gurudev Sri Sri Ravi Shankar. Shimon Peres was a visionary, a warrior for peace, and an enduring pillar of Israel's founding generation. I fondly remember my interactions with him. On his invitation, I had visited Israel several times. He was a towering personality who had a deep interest in meditation and in bringing communities together. He will continue to remain an inspiration for generations to come. Israel and India have always enjoyed close ties of friendship, and may this strengthen even further. Om Shanti, 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 Shalom. Thank you.
Especially to all the people here. From this side, it is a beautiful view to see so many people gathered here to honor a person, to listen all the things he did in the big way. But I want to say something else. I want to tell a little story about what he did for me from a very young age. When I was 8, 9 years old, I played outside. We played war, because that was, for us young boys, a really nice game. Perfect thing, everything. We were playing that, and then my father came by. And he stopped his bicycle and he said, "Guys, what are you doing?" I said, "Oh, we're playing war." He said, "Yeah, I don't think that is a nice game to play. We played cowboys and Indians, but now we had war. Because there was a war in Israel going on. We started reading newspapers on school. So for us it was, I don't know, it was something special. And then my father told me, there's another side of war. Think about that also. And we as kids, we always had a problem. When we had a problem, we made a campfire. And my father said, think about what is war? What does it do to people? And so we lighted the campfire, at least we wanted to. I had the matches, but I didn't have the box. So the peace talks that we had then were already a problem. We had it in place, and there were always kids, now we're not going to sit by the campfire to talk about peace. But we talked about peace, and we couldn't find a solution. We had the strangest thing, someone told that his cat died, and the other one said my grandfather died, but we couldn't get the concept of war, other than being a game. But after the words of my father, we just decided not to play war anymore. And I think that was one of our first diplomatic encounters that we had with peace. So I don't know Mr. Peres as a person, but I know him as a personality. And I can only talk about that. What did that personality mean to me? So that was my first encounter, war. And then it's a person for peace. Because I know a little bit about what he did in the past, in the security world, and he built up. He was on the dark side of a government, on the dark side of a system. And then later, the rest of the part of his life, the rest of the half of his part, he dedicated to peace. And that is, for me, something almost fascinating. How can those two things fit together? Now I become older, now I see more in the international politics. I see that they're almost on the same side of the medal, not on the opposite side. You have to have strength on one side to make peace on the other side. And then there's another thing. It's a person that got the Nobel Prize for Peace. It's the same man that people threw tomatoes at. How can you cope with that as a person? He did. So for me, this is the contrast in all those things that make somebody big as he is. So then I read about him on the internet, and then he said, after the 20 years he had the Peace Center, where he put himself for everything for peace, and then after 20 years of the existence of the Peace Center, he said, the only thing what we maybe have done wrong is not dreaming big enough. I go, wow, how can you not dream big enough? And then the rest of the sentences, I read it I listened to my colleague for at least 10, 20 times, and then he said something, we have to work on peace for all the people and for every person. And then I go, wow, this is... So now I'm a diplomat myself, and I want to make it some kind of commitment. No, not some kind, I want to make a commitment. My consul is grooming me to be a diplomat. And on this moment, I want to say to all of you, I will give my efforts for his initiative of making peace in Kashmir. Is that dreaming too big? I don't know. But with this, from this man, I learned, no, it's not too big. You have to dream big to do something good. So thank you all for being here. Please remind me of my commitment. I will work for peace as a young diplomat. Thank you very much.